I want to do an extra disclaimer on this subject. It is a very difficult topic for me to understand, so we're going to just basically be talking peer-to-peer. My coworker said this should really be called Advanced Misunderstandings of Risk Neutral Valuation because, again, it's difficult for me to understand, even the misunderstandings. But I'm going to go over it, and here we go. So the first misunderstanding is the market's expectation of future short-term rates is equal to the forward rate path of the observed free yield curve. My understanding of this, of what it's trying to say, is that the market doesn't expect that the market consistent rates are really going to play out the way they are. I think it's hinting here, like the way this paragraph is phrased, is the market's expectation is actually leaned a little bit more towards the real world expectations. And so that is why the path of the market's expectation is higher than the risk-free curve. And again, if you have anything to add, please comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. The second misunderstanding is the expected path of short-term risk-free rate is higher in the real-world scenarios than in risk-neutral scenarios. And this is one I really had to wrap my head around. And so here we go. I'm just going to do a quick drawing right here of what my understanding is. Suppose that the distribution of what the yield can happen in equity returns or whatever returns is this wide, like this. And let's say the risk neutral price, and it's always short term basically for risk neutral pricing. So it's just slowly increasing here, just at like a flat consistent basis. And the real world, my viewpoint on this is it kind of just does it's kind of like below like this, and then it eventually just raises up higher and higher like that. And what do I mean by that? It talks about in the paper that there's term premiums. And the way that I understood it the best is instead of imagining that this real world rate is an equity return, I'm going to imagine that it's a fixed income. So let's say it's a 20-year zero coupon bond, and it's going to yield higher than the treasury rate. Treasury rate's very liquid. It's basically default free, but you should expect a higher yield overall. So over a 20-year span of this bond, you're going to yield more than just the risk neutral rate, which is essentially a default free right here. And so, but here's the issue. The bond itself has some risks involved with it. So like if interest rates shift, then like let's say they increase a whole bunch, well the market value of your bond goes down. And that's why right here in the short term, it's your expected curve is lower than at the very end, because at the very beginning of your bond, you're assuming a lot of risks. You're assuming more liquidity risk, and you're assuming this, especially what's focused here is term premium. And so the fact that the interest rates can change, and so that's why it's lower here. Like in the short term, you're better off getting the risk neutral rate than holding that bond. But here at the end, between years 19 and 20, you're yielding whatever rate this bond gets versus let's say that the risk neutral rate never changes versus this rate right here. And that's just a great deal. It's like, wow, I'm getting 5% just for 1 year versus the 2% of 1 year. So that's why the term premium is like this. And it explains also in the article that the further out you go, the more term premium there is, and the more term premium that is required. And please watch part 2 of this video to continue on with the other misunderstandings.